Once you stop only setting goals and actually start setting new standards, that's when your life starts to change. Goals are great, goals are important, but standards change who you are. In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly why standards work when goals don't, and how raising your standards will completely change the trajectory of your life. Hey friend, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Jillz, and I help women step into their power, tap into their divine feminine, and become their best self, live their best life. So if that's something you wanna do, you should subscribe and stick around. And real quick, before I get into it, I also have my new course, Love Alchemy, coming so soon. This is where I teach you how to embody feminine energy in your romantic relationship and keep him cherishing you, pursuing you, and giving you that queen treatment. I've been with my husband for 16 years, married for 9, and this is everything that I think you need to know condensed into one powerful course. So the waitlist for that is down below, and it's coming right before Valentine's Day. So let's get into it. If you want to level up your life, it requires a leveling up of your standards. Not just your goals, your standards. So in this video, I'm gonna explain the difference between a goal and a standard and why it matters so much, why standards are so psychologically powerful and effective, and lastly, how to set your own new standards so you can start showing up differently this year. So goals and standards, they kind of feel like the same thing, right? They're in the same realm, but they're different. I want you to think about something, okay? A task that we do every day. Brushing our teeth. For the most part, you don't wake up every morning and debate whether you're gonna brush your teeth, right? You don't necessarily need motivation for it. You don't need to hype yourself up to do it. You don't need to put it on your vision board. You just do it. Even if it's an annoying little task that you don't like doing, you do it because it's a standard. It's non-negotiable. It's who you are, it's what you do. Why do you brush your teeth? Simply because you refuse to be that person with a disgusting, smelly mouth and rotting teeth. Having a clean mouth is just a human standard that most of us have. It's not a goal. We think, I don't want a gross mouth and absolutely heinous breath, so therefore I will go do that task. You have a standard, therefore you naturally take the appropriate action to uphold that standard. Another example, how you present yourself. Some people just have a standard that they don't leave the house looking sloppy or like they just rolled out of bed. It's a standard. So what happens? You naturally put effort in. You look cute. You wear a nice outfit. You have good hygiene. You wear jewelry that makes you look put together. But before we get into the rest of the video though, that leads me to today's sponsor, Linjer. Now, just in case you're unfamiliar with Linjer, they have some of the most beautiful jewelry. They're known for their more simple, more minimal designs, which I personally love. And they really pride themselves on creating high quality products, but at a more affordable price point because they cut out the middlemen and some of those unnecessary costs and markups. I want to show you some of the newer pieces I got from them recently. So this necklace I got a while ago. It's called the petal chain necklace in white gold. And I love it. It's so shimmery. I wear it all the time and I wear it in a ton of my videos. And I've gotten so many comments asking where this necklace is from. It's Linjer. But anyway, since I love it so much, I decided to get the matching petal chain bracelet. It's just so dainty and pretty. And I love the way it shimmers in the light, and it'll look good just solo on your wrist or as a part of a big bracelet stack. And then another item I got previously was this birthstone ring. It's a favorite of mine. And so this is my birthstone, July, but I mentioned before how I thought it would be cute if I got one that was my husband's birthstone too. So I got it, so cute. And then also when I mentioned that, someone mentioned in the comments that I should get a birthstone that is the month of our wedding anniversary too. And I just love that idea, especially because my lovely dog Piper, sleeping back there, her birthday is actually the same day as our wedding anniversary. Meant to be, right? But anyway, I got this third birthstone ring that is the month we got married and Piper's birth month. So I got our whole little family on here. I think it's just so pretty all stacked together with the different colors, and I love that it actually means something to me. All the pieces from them have held up great and they're just wonderful everyday pieces. The next thing I'm eyeing is this bracelet. I just love dainty bracelets and I love the look of graduated diamonds. So this is next on my wish list. So if you want to check out these pieces or any other pieces from Linjer, you can click the link in the description and use my discount code Jillz for a special offer. So thank you to Linjer. I truly do love their stuff, highly recommend, but let's get back into the video. Okay, so another common example of goals versus standards, and something that's usually a very common New Year's goal for people, working out. For a lot of people, that's just a goal, which means every single morning you wake up and you think, oh, I have to work out today. Should I do it? Ugh, I don't really want to. I know I should, but I don't feel like it. I'm tired. maybe tomorrow. Because in our heads, goals feel optional. They feel like something we're trying to reach for, something up here that we hope to get to someday. But standards feel like the floor you refuse to drop below. The minimum version of you and your life that you are willing to accept and tolerate. And that is what changes everything. Goals live outside of you. They're aspirational, they're nice to haves, but standards live inside of you. They're who you are. They become a part of your identity, and your identity impacts the life you live and the life you create. Let me show you the difference, okay? Your goal this year might be, I want to work out 4 times a week, or I want to lose 20 pounds. And that's a great goal. But if you decide to actually set a new standard for yourself, not just a goal, but a standard, that sounds different. It sounds like, I don't let my body get out of shape, or I refuse to be someone who is unhealthy and unfit. I'm just not willing to tolerate that. See the difference? A goal is a specific outcome or action that you're hoping for. A standard becomes who you are. A standard becomes a guiding principle for how you live your life. Your standard is, I will always be someone who is in shape, just like brushing your teeth. I will not be someone with a stanky, dirty mouth. And so what happens? The action becomes a natural byproduct of who you decide you are. Or if your goal is, I want to be more confident, your standard might be, I will not abandon myself just to be liked. That's not who I am. I'm not going to do it. And it becomes a part of your identity, your sense of self. There's no room for negotiation. And then what happens? You show up more confidently because action follows identity. Or if your goal is, I want to eat healthier, your standard might be, I don't eat food that makes me feel like crap. Or I refuse to put garbage in my body every single day. Not acceptable. That's not the way I live my life. That's not who I am. It's not about a specific meal plan or being absolutely perfect. It's about refusing to be that person who eats junky all the time, because that person is below the standard for who you want to be and how you want to live your life. And once you decide that that's just who you are, that your standard is up here, then that's who you are. James Clear says something powerful in his book, Atomic Habits. He says, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. Or in other words, another way that I like to think about it is you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your standards. Your standards are who you default to. And so when everyday life happens, or especially when life gets hard or busy or stressful, you default back to what's familiar. You fall back to whatever you've made a non-negotiable. The way that we work as human beings is that whatever standard we've set as the absolute minimum, that's where we tend to land and hover around. Here's what I mean. If you have a standard for yourself that you make at least 10K a month, not a goal, not something you're maybe hoping for, but a standard, a floor you refuse to live below, then you start operating from that identity. You start making decisions from that mindset. You're gonna show up, you're gonna put yourself out there, you're gonna let yourself be seen and promote yourself. You're not gonna undercharge. You adjust your strategy. You're gonna do whatever, but you'll figure it out. You'll make it happen. Not just because you are motivated, but because that is just who you are. You are someone who was going to make at least 10K a month, period. And so when you dip below your standard, you naturally figure out how to bring yourself back into alignment. So when you're at, let's say, 5K, it doesn't feel like, oh, well, whatever, I tried, doesn't really matter, maybe next time. Instead, you start to feel inherently misaligned. There's cognitive dissonance between who you say you are and who you're being. It feels wrong. And your brain will encourage you to close that gap, to find new solutions, to show up differently, to figure it out, because it's protecting who you say you are. Same thing with fitness. If your standard is, I'm someone who moves my body regularly, or I am someone who is fit and that's just the way it is, not just like, oh, I'm trying to work out more, then skipping workouts all the time doesn't just feel like breaking a goal, it sort of feels like betraying yourself. It feels wrong. It feels like you're becoming someone you're not. And that discomfort is what keeps you consistent. Not just willpower, not discipline, but identity protection. And when you notice yourself slipping, you'll naturally bring yourself back into alignment with who you are. For me, I'm just gonna be honest with you about what some of my standards are for myself. I refuse to not be financially abundant. I refuse. It's just not who I am. Even when Cole and I had no money when we were younger and when we were broke and struggling, we never let go of that identity. We always knew we would figure it out. And that standard is what kept us moving forward, even when it would have been so easy to just accept being broke. I refuse to let myself go physically. It's just not happening. I mean, I know that I will age and I will look different over time. That is fine. But I will never stop taking care of myself. I will never stop trying to look my best with what I've got. I will never stop moving my body, showing up for my health, doing my skincare, getting my haircuts, because it's just not who I am. And because my standard is that I like to look nice and feel good. I refuse to live my life inauthentically. I will not do it. I refuse to work a job I hate. I will not pretend to be someone I'm not. I will not do things in a certain way just because that's how it's always been done. I don't care. I refuse to lose myself and live a life that doesn't feel like mine. It is something I'm genuinely not willing to tolerate. So I figured it out, how to live my life within that standard. I refuse to not be a kind person. I don't care if all the people around me are big fat meanie heads. I don't care if someone comments in the comments below that I'm a big ugly troll. I refuse to not be a kind, caring, empathetic, thoughtful person. That is just who I am, non-negotiable, period. These aren't goals that I'm working towards. These are standards that I live by, and they guide every decision I make, and they impact the way that I show up every day in my life. And here's the thing about standards. When something truly becomes a non-negotiable, you figure it out. You find a way. If your dog, who you loved dearly, needed to have surgery in 1 week, and if she did not get it, she would die, and that surgery cost $2,000 and you didn't have $2,000, would you find a way to get it? Absolutely. You wouldn't sit there and say, well, I'll try, or maybe I can do it. You wouldn't try to figure it out for 1 hour and then give up. No, you would figure it out. You would just figure it out. You would make it happen because it's not optional, it's a non-negotiable. That is the energy of a standard. When something becomes non-negotiable, your mind starts to see it in a different way. It approaches it differently. You don't debate it. You don't wonder if you feel like doing it or not. You don't give yourself the option to quit or give up. You just do what needs to be done because it needs to be done because that is your standard. Here's what I mean. If going to the gym is a goal, if you skip it, you will feel disappointed. But if your fitness is a standard, you can't betray your standard without betraying yourself. Think about it. You can go weeks without working out, and sure, you're probably gonna feel disappointed that you're not hitting your goals, but you would never go weeks without brushing your teeth. Why? Because one is a goal and the other is a standard. When you don't hit your goal, it disappoints you. When you don't uphold your standard, it disgusts you. When something becomes a standard, the cost of breaking it becomes too high because you're not just letting yourself down. You're becoming someone you don't want to be. Not upholding that standard means betraying yourself. And for most people, that is simply not an option. Why? Because it is too uncomfortable. That is why standards work more powerfully than goals ever will. Goals ask you to do something different. Standards ask you to be someone different. And your brain is wired to protect your identity above everything else. That is the power of standards. Goals are great, goals are fabulous. Of course, I set new goals every year, but goals don't change your life. Standards do. Okay, so beyond the identity piece, which is obviously huge, but beyond that, there are some other psychological reasons why standards work so well and why they're so effective. First of all, standards create freedom by eliminating decision fatigue. Here's what I mean. Okay, when you have standards, you're not waking up every day and negotiating with yourself about them or about the basics. Should I work out? Should I eat well? Should I do this today? Should I not? The decision is already made, and that one decision, your standard, makes 1,000 other decisions for you automatically. So instead of spending all your mental energy managing yourself and negotiating with yourself and overthinking, you have more freedom, more space, more emotional clarity, more energy for the things that actually matter. Standards simplify your life so you can be free within the structure it gives you. Many years ago, I developed really bad health issues and an autoimmune issue, and I was just really miserable. And I was dedicated. I was so dedicated. I was so devoted to healing naturally and getting better. And I did. But in that process, I very clearly had to change my diet because of what I was eating before was total trash, lots of fast food, nothing good, nothing healthy. And when I attempted to improve my diet, I found myself getting stressed every day and overthinking everything and negotiating with myself. Should I eat this? Should I eat that? I know I probably shouldn't have that, but maybe just this once. And honestly, it started to get kind of exhausting and stressful. So I decided to set a standard for myself. I decided that I don't eat gluten, dairy, or processed sugar. And that's just it. That's who I am, that's who I'm being. Because for me, those foods were not making me feel my best. And from the outside, that might sound really restrictive and a little intense, but to me, it gave me freedom. I felt free because once I set that standard, it cut out so much decision fatigue. And if you are an overthinker like me, then you get it. I wasn't standing in front of the pantry, debating with myself anymore. I wasn't stressing looking at the menu at the restaurant. The decision was made. I don't eat those things, period. And that clarity added so much ease to my life. Now, I don't need that exact rule for myself anymore because I've healed, I've evolved. I have more of an intuitive sense of what food would make me feel good and what won't. There's no overthinking or negotiating going on in that area of my life anymore. But at the time, that standard for my life gave me freedom. It gave me clarity. It gave me direction. It gave me peace. Structure might feel constricting, but in most cases, it feels expansive and freeing. That was just a tiny little example from my life, but my point is that once you have a clear standard, they almost act as a filter for your life. And things that don't align with it don't make it through the door. Toxic people, bad habits, soul-sucking energy drains in your life, if it causes you to go against your standard, you naturally push it away. Subconsciously, you just do. Your standards become your automatic filter, and that protects you and guides you without you really having to think about it. If your standard is, I only date men who show real interest and intention with me, then that outlook will subconsciously guide your decisions and filter who gets access to you. So if you meet someone and yeah, he shows a little bit of interest, but he doesn't ever really commit, he doesn't initiate, he doesn't make plans, then you're not sitting there overanalyzing his mixed signals for 3 months and stressing out. Your standard already filtered him out. He doesn't make it past the door. And lastly, having clear standards will usually give you a sense of nervous system safety because there's consistency, there's predictability, there's stability in that. And our nervous systems, they love that. When you have standards, your life now has more clarity. You know who you are. You know what you will and won't tolerate. You're not in constant chaos or mental negotiation with yourself. And that consistency signals safety to the nervous system. Your nervous system loves to know what to expect, and standards give you that. Okay, so let's talk about how to actually set new standards, because understanding this concept is one thing, but actually implementing it is another. So here is a simple 4-step framework for creating new standards for yourself. Step 1. Find the places you are constantly negotiating with yourself. This is your starting point. So where are you asking yourself the same questions every single day? Where are you tired of deciding? Where are you experiencing mental friction or guilt? Because these repeated internal debates are a sign that usually a standard is missing, or that there's a lack of clarity in your life here. So if you're constantly asking, should I, ... if you want to level up your life, that is usually where a standard needs to go. Step 2, raise your baseline. AKA decide what new version of you feels normal. Your standards are your default setting. They are the version of yourself that you keep returning to. This is why people self-sabotage or plateau or just never really reach their goals. Not because they don't want more, but because their standards, their internal baseline is still set way too low. What we want and what we're willing to tolerate are two different things. And we almost always default to what we are willing to tolerate. We just do. So every time they make progress, they unconsciously drift back. Not because they don't care, but because that's where they feel at home. And real change happens once you decide to change where you feel at home. So this is where you need to decide your new floor, the new minimum version of yourself to refuse to live below, the baseline for what you are willing to accept and tolerate about you and your life. So step 2 isn't about tolerating the bare minimum. It's about raising the bare minimum, the version of yourself that feels normal. Ask yourself, where do I keep returning to? Where do I keep returning to that I don't like? What level do I unconsciously accept as just who I am? Because that is your current standard. But if you want real lasting change, you have to move that baseline up. Your standards determine where you stabilize and default to and what you decide is a non-negotiable. And remember, when you decide something is a non-negotiable, you figure it out. Your brain will figure out ways to make it happen. So raise the floor, move that baseline up, make the elevated version of you the default, not the exception, and let that feel normal. Step 3, rewrite the goal as an identity statement. So this part is simple but important. So instead of focusing on what you want to do, you decide who you are. So you stop saying, I want to work out more, and you start saying, I'm someone who moves my body regularly. I'm someone who's fit. That is just who I am. That's just who I'm gonna be. I will not tolerate less. Or you stop saying, I wanna eat healthier, and you just decide, I don't eat food that makes me feel terrible. I don't eat food that makes me feel inflamed and bloated. I take care of myself. I'm someone who cares about how I feel, not just about how things taste. Or you stop saying, I wanna be more confident, and you decide, I don't change who I am to be liked. And you can apply this anywhere, right? So it's not, I wanna be more disciplined, but I follow through on what I commit to. Not, I wanna save money, but I'm not someone who spends impulsively. Not just, I want better relationships, but I don't tolerate disrespect or breadcrumbs. The shift goes from being an external goal to an internal identity. And when you frame it this way, the decision is already made. You're not waking up every morning asking yourself what you feel like doing. You're simply acting in alignment with who you've decided you are. And when your actions don't match how you see yourself, it creates discomfort, misalignment. And that tension right there will pull you back into alignment. This is why standards that are rooted in identity don't require constant motivation or constant willpower. They run automatically because being out of alignment feels worse than the effort it takes to stay consistent. Step 4, remove the daily negotiation. And this is where most people accidentally mess up. They decide a new standard and then they keep reopening the conversation every single day. They wake up and ask, should I work out today? Do I really need to eat well today? Fast food sounds good. Am I making decisions like someone who expects to be wealthy? Or, you know what? Am I just deciding that this is as good as it gets? And the moment you start asking those questions, you have turned a standard back into a goal. Standards only work when the decision is already made. Think about brushing your teeth again. You don't wake up and debate it. You don't check your mood. You don't ask how motivated you are. You just do it because that decision was made a long time ago, and that's how standards are supposed to function. So step 4 is about closing the door on that debate. You don't ask if you're gonna honor the standard. You only ask how you're gonna honor that standard today, given the circumstances. And that is an important distinction. So I hope you understand how impactful your standards are in your life and how they are secretly the parts of you that are running the show, not your goals, your standards. So here's what to do. Okay, decide one new standard for yourself. Not 15 all new ones all at once, just one. One area where maybe you're tired of negotiating with yourself. One area where maybe you keep slipping back, and decide what your new baseline is. Something that sounds like, this is just who I am now. I refuse to tolerate anything less. Goals don't change your life, standards do. And when you elevate your standards, your life has no choice but to fall in line. Now, if you're really in this zone of leveling up and changing your life and getting your life together, I highly recommend you go check out this video. This is how I stay organized in my life. It is my life operating system, and it's how I've been able to hit goal after goal and stay on top of things. And I walk you through everything step by step. So I'll see you over there, or I'll just see you next time in my next video. Bye.